Absolute Carnage, with its brute force narrative and visuals, is the perfect change of pace to the high concept mind screw going on with Jonathan Hickman's X-Men. Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman's excellent Absolute Carnage event series continues this week. I rated the premiere issue perfect across the board. Needless to say, the creative duo set the bar through the roof last month. I don't think Absolute Carnage number 2's quality quite reaches its predecessor, but this is still an excellent comic book that I highly recommend. Comic readers looking for a high-octane thrill ride with a tremendous amount of gore and other disturbing images are gonna love Absolute Carnage. Although, I can't speak with any confidence for the plethora of tie-in miniseries. I'm severely underwhelmed by the writing talents across the board and only plan on reading Peter David's Symbiote Spider-Man and Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk tie-ins. But the main series is absolutely metal. Things already look very bleak for Venom and Peter Parker's Spider-Man at the end of Absolute Carnage number 1. Cletus Cassidy has not only bonded with Carnage, but has added the power of the Grendel to his arsenal. Carnage infected Norman Osborn, who Venom and Spidey needed to test the maker's experimental codex-removal technology. According to artist Ryan Stegman, things are going to get much worse before they get better. In a recent interview with Newsarama, Stegman said, and I quote, "Just know that nobody is safe. I'll say this, a lot of events rely on that big death that shocks everyone. But what if there's a fate worse than death? What then?" Writer Donny Cates added in an interview with CBR.com, "Anyone who has the misfortune of being a main character in this book is not going to walk out of it the same way they walked into it." So just what do Cates and Stegman have in store for Eddie Brock, Peter Parker, and Norman Osborn this week? Sit back and relax because it's time for all the details in my Absolute Carnage comic book review. The art from Ryan Stegman, J.P. Mayer, and Frank Martin continues to impress this week. The opening image of Carnage, overlaid with pieces of Cletus Cassidy's face, is terrifying, revolting, and beautiful all at the same time. The maggots in Cassidy's mouth are a grotesque detail that add to Stegman's delightfully horrifying vision for the book. The frightening ambiance surrounding Carnage throughout the book is palpable. There are also several excellent splash pages in this comic that highlight how key J.P. Mayer and Frank Martin are in making the visuals in Absolute Carnage among the best in the entire industry. Martin in particular douses the book in reds that perfectly accentuate Stegman's heavy use of blacks and shadowing. This page just looks cool. I'm pretty sure it's scenes from all the tie-in issues since the first comic. Stegman and his team convey very effectively Carnage and his army of infected are wreaking havoc on a biblical scale in their quest to wake symbiote god Null. The visuals in this week's Absolute Carnage maintain the impossibly high standard previously set. I rate the art a perfect 5 out of 5. This week's issue is half the pages, and while the story is still great, it's not quite as epic as its predecessor. One thing that's very striking is just how fast these 30 pages fly by. The story is basically a set of high-octane, gory action scenes with a couple of character moments sprinkled in between. The comic picks right back up at Ravencroft after Venom and Spidey fail to acquire Norman Osborn. Cassidy, Norman, and the rest of the infected are closing in on the unlikely duo before they end up hanging on for dear life on the outside of a tower, before barely escaping with their lives. Cletus Cassidy calls off the chase for now, which leads to a bit of conflict between him and newly infected Norman Osborn. Osborn asks, what happened to running someone down, screaming and laughing, and slitting their throats? Cassidy retorts, the young wolf runs and kills one, the old wolf walks and kills them all, hinting at future trouble between the two psychopaths. This particular dialogue between the two is pretty good. It conveys a difference in philosophy and experience level between the two Carnages, but it gets a bit hokey in the next scenes between the two, which I'm going to cover here in a bit. When Eddie and Peter finally escape, they lay next to each other in the rain, both fully aware they should be dead. This is easily the best character moment in the book and works really well. Eddie has a very defeated disposition saying, "What do you want from me? We lost. we aren't strong enough. The much more optimistic Peter Parker says, you fall down, you get back up. And you hope you get up more than you fall down. That's how it works, Eddie. These dynamics feel very in character between the two. They both decide they need reinforcements to help remove the codex and save future victims. Peter will persuade Captain America, Wolverine, and other heroes to their cause. Eddie sets out to recruit other low-life criminals and psychopaths and murderous aliens. The Maker calls Eddie and informs him his son Dylan is a Carnage target. Eddie is hardened by this new grave forecast. His son is next on the chopping block. This is a well-timed twist by Cates to up the stakes to a new personal level for Brock. Also well-timed is the view Eddie and Venom see next. An insurmountable army of infected are heading their way. It looks like things have really hit rock bottom. But like Cates promised, any main character in this book is not going to walk out of it the same way they walked in. The story then takes a break to show Carnage's lair underneath the city, and it looks absolutely horrifying. But this is where the interaction between Cassidy and Norman gets a bit wonky for me. Osborn challenges Cletus, who responds, "There's only one Carnage in this house, and Carnage rules." After which Norman threatens, when you finally get off your butt and start this little spree of yours, there's going to come a time when you and me are going to square up. One of us is going to have to die to collect all the pieces of the codex. It's effective in that it's setting up for future conflict, but it doesn't really sound cool or menacing. And it doesn't really feel like it fits the book to me. Hopefully Cates tightens the dynamics between these two up next issue. The story then picks up where I assume Absolute Carnage Miles Morales ended, with Miles and Scorpion battling the infected. Miles actually holds his own for a bit, but the former Venom takes off, leaving Morales to fight off the Carnage horde single-handedly. Venom arrives and grabs Scorpion and throws him back into the fray. Which in hindsight was a terrible idea. Carnage catches him in midair and begins working to extract his codex. Miles releases himself and throws down some leather on Cassidy, freeing Scorpion for the moment. Cletus is furious he lost some of his precious codex before Scorpion cries, I can't feel my legs." Everywhere Venom turns, there's nothing but death and destruction at the hands of Carnage. And it's only going to get worse, trust me. This is a really well-written comic book, but it feels like it takes a step back this week. There are a few character moments that really stand out. The conflict between Cletus Cassidy and Norman Osborn doesn't feel nearly as organic as the rest of the book. I rate the characterization 4 out of 5. The plot is a lot of fun, and there are a couple of great reveals, like Eddie's son Dylan being a primary Carnage target. The comic also reads a bit too fast despite being 30 pages. I rate the plot 4.5 out of 5. Marvel is on absolute fire right now with Hickman's X-Men and several hot ongoing titles. Donny Cates' Absolute Carnage event is a huge part of that. Despite the amount of gore and terrifying images, Absolute Carnage is a blast to read. I don't normally associate nonstop fun with horror genre, but Cates and Stegman are pulling it off here. The graphics in this comic are among the best in the entire industry. Every page is a terror-filled delight. The story is a high-octane Gorefest that leaves me frothing at the mouth for more. I rate Absolute Carnage 4.5 out of 5 overall. I highly recommend this to mature readers who can handle horrifying imagery. Things are only getting more exciting from here. During his Newsarama interview, Stegman also stated, "Issue number 3, page 20, was one where when we talked about it in the room at the Story Summit for this book, we all kind of gasped and thought about how cool this was going to be. After everything I've witnessed, I can't wait to see what happens in issue 3 that stands out more than the first 90 pages of the story." Absolute Carnage, with its brute force narrative and visuals, is the perfect change of pace to the high concept mind screw going on with Jonathan Hickman's X-Men. With each passing week, it feels like Marvel and their momentum are leaving the rest of the industry behind. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews, and don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.